back. Hello, everybody. It's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries and the Raw Life Health Show. And we have our guest today, Dr. Alfonso. Dr. Alfonso, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's
Uh,
good to
d-
be with you guys again.
Dr. Alfonso, you are, I don't want to say expert, but I want to say expert in electromagnetic field technologies. And today I want to talk to you about exactly that. It's known as the EMFs, electric magnetic field. Well, why don't you tell us what EMF is and tell us why we should know about it?
Correct. Like you just said, EMF is electromagnetic field. You can also refer to it as an electromagnetic frequency. So anything that runs off of AC current, which you plug into the wall or a battery and some type of motor, will produce what we call an EMF or electromagnetic frequency. Now, that's also kind of a generic word too. When we're talking about anything that has electromagnetic frequency, everything would kind of be called an EMF. Even though when we get into it, you would break it down more specifically into like magnetic, electric, radio, and microwave. And the last category would be what they call voltage spikes or dirty electricity.
Okay,
But
so
all of them collectively together would be called EMFs.
okay, now dirty electricity is something I often refer to the toxicity of the EMF. Isn't it in fact all considered dirty electricity, the dangerous part of it?
Yes and no. They get more specific in dirty electricity sometimes just by if you have a normal circuit, but you have a voltage spike. In engineering, they're a little bit more specific to call that the dirty electricity, where you're actually having that voltage spike that's not normally supposed to be there.
I see.
But it would still be called an EMF.
Okay, so I learned something today. That's good. So now the EMFs, it's everywhere today. Everything that's wireless is pretty much now. There's EMF. Is there EMF you're saying and things you plug in as well as wireless technology?
Correct. As long as it runs on some type of AC current or even a battery, and there's moving parts or a motor, it's going to produce an EMF.
Now, for years, I mean, since I've way before I was a kid, batteries were quite common and plugging things in were common. But now there's the wireless technology. Are they both just as bad? Because I don't remember people there being a connection between batteries and plugging things in and tumors the way there are today.
Yes and no. The technology there has always been evidence that they weren't good, but the things what we would call radio frequencies and microwaves, such as your Wi-Fi, your cell phone, um, the microwave oven, these type of things, Bluetooth, because it is using a wireless communication to your phone, they are exponentially worse. And it's because of the type of method they're using to broadcast and carry information.
Well, tell us a little bit more about this method, and also when you say they're worse, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, what happens is, um, where should I start? There's so much to talk about on this topic. It's great we're talking about it because in my opinion, I've been studying this for quite some time, and just in the last couple years, there's more and more evidence, like the Bioinitiative report that came out in 2012. And after you're reading that and you realize how it's affecting the body, it this becomes, I think, one of the biggest threats to our health we have to deal with now. I mean, you can almost not go to anywhere and find a hotel that doesn't have Wi-Fi or something. And so this technology keeps expanding, but the science on how it affects our body isn't really keeping up with, you know, the problem is a lot of these companies are making big money making these products, and they just basically lie. And they get scientists to come out and say, well, there's no science to prove that they're dangerous. Well, to be honest and be fair, a lot of these scientists don't understand the energy systems of the body. So they're really not looking at it from that perspective. So when you look at a cell phone, they have a rate called SAR. That's specific absorption rate. And they have these big meters that are like $20,000, $30,000 to measure the absorption rate of the radiation of the cell phone. And they're also looking at how much it heats the tissue. Because obviously you don't want to cook your brain, so they don't want it to heat the tissue too hot. So they do have standards on those things, but those are way too low of standards because it's not just how much absorption or heat that's being transferred. And what happens is most of your radio waves for the sound or the message to be broadcast long distances, they weren't able to do it. And this was the military back with those big CBs they used to wear on their backs. They weren't able to broadcast the message over long distance on low, broad waves. So they had to find a way to broadcast it long distances. So they decided to start broadcasting it over microwaves. And what happens is, so then you have these different hertz. So these different waves have different frequencies we call hertz. And the information are broadcast over those hertz or those waves. But a lot of those resonate at the same frequency as our body. So what we found is there's a principle called cyclone resonance concept, and that is where you have an electromagnetic frequency that's at right angles at the same frequency of whatever else is the same frequency that it's being broadcast on. There's a communication transfer there. So with a lot of our wireless stuff in these cell phones, since they're using waves that are very similar to the waves that are in our body, like our brain and our nervous system and our cells, that means because of the cyclone action of the resonance, information can be broadcast from those EMFs, the man-made ones, to our body. And what that basically does on a bottom line is it messes with the energetic system's communication. And if you mess with that communication, that manifests into the cells. So now the cellular communication is going to be wrong. Well, a lot of scientists in mainstream that work for these big companies, they're not looking at that. Now, there have been a bunch of scientists who are now, and that's what that bioinitiative report was in 2012. They had tons of doctors and scientists from all over the world, and they just put out the report in 2012. And they're looking at the different effects that these things have on the body, more than just what we call our standard safe that are given to us by the FCC and the FDA that really aren't safe.
Well, I know when you
I hope
start,
that makes sense.
that makes great sense, and I know when you start messing with the communication between the cells. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean that's what cancer is: cells that aren't communicating correctly, pretty much. I mean, it really can manifest into tumors and cancers, and it is, and this is what's happening, and this is nothing new. It's been going on a long time.
exactly.
Now, tell us about the EMF, the reader, the trimeter reader. Tell us about that because you told me about this. I got this. I measured things in the house. Right away, I switched out my keyboard.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Yep.
right away I switched out my keyboard, and I'm already getting my radiation-free headsets. I'm getting rid of the headset, and but tell us about it because this is something that people need to know more about, and I'm making them available. I have them for sale now on my website because I want to make sure people can get this. So tell us about this.
Great. Yeah, there's what we call a TriField meter, and I have one right here, and Paul's probably going to show you that. Um, there's a bunch of different meters out there. I mean, there's like 500 different type if you want to get real extreme and become a researcher and go measure everything that you can measure. But just for normal everyday things like you and me, we probably only need to get maybe 2, 3 different types of meters. This is the first one I recommend for most people because it can measure 3 different types of fields. And you remember I was saying that all EMFs can really be broken down into those 4. In a way, you can almost use that to measure the 4. The difference is every meter is going to have positives and negatives. This one's probably one of the cheaper ones that you can get that will measure most things that are called EMFs or run on magnetic electric waves. And that's going to include most of your things that plug in the house. Now, the only downfall with this one is it does have radio microwave on there, but if you ever look at the chart, it's very low. It goes from zero point zero 0.01 to 1. It's not very high, and it's not a digital meter. So if you really want to get more specific on radiation from a cell phone, you're going to want another meter for that. You can, however, measure the EMF, basically the magnetic field from the phone, because the phone will have both because it does have a battery in it.
Sure. Well, basically, it's going to find a hotspot around people's houses and the spots they should avoid. I mean, I just found the spot where my couch was, and on the other side of the wall was my fuse box in the house. And I never
Right,
imagined it was like that was the worst spot in the house to be sitting. And I moved my
right,
couch immediately after getting this. And if I didn't have this, I wouldn't have known that.
right. There's a story we had with one lady, and I can't use the name, but she came in because she had severe cancer, and we started doing some of my normal treatments and stuff, and she was getting a lot better. But then she hit this wall, and she was getting worse. Couldn't figure out what was going on. So, started asking some questions and found she moved her bed and stuff. So we took a trip to her house because she didn't have a meter. And sure enough, right on the wall where the bed is, really the head of the bed, it was pegging the meter. And here it is. She has a really, really old house, and the wiring really isn't that great. So I was probably actually picking up dirty electricity because she was having voltage spikes. And it just happened to be she moved her bed there. So, every time she was sleeping all night, her head is getting exposed to these high frequencies, and that was making the difference. And once we got that corrected, she started responding to treatment again. So,
Wow.
these things can be underestimated because we don't see them. It's not like you can take a blood reading and say, oh, you've been exposed to Wi-Fi today. We can't do that. We can see the cause and effect because it's energy, but we have to be a little bit smarter and use devices like this to really make sure we're in a safe area.
Wow, wow, definitely, absolutely. So what would be your advice? I mean, people can go out and spend a lot of money trying to fight this, or they could just find the hotspots and avoid it, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it really comes down to it, the best thing is um, you either limit your exposure, and that's not always necessarily the best because obviously the less is the better, or you find what's the safe distance. A lot of things that put out these high EMFs or even radio waves, you start moving away even a couple inches, sometimes the reading automatically drops, or a foot away, and I'm sure you probably experienced that with your couch and the other things.
Sure.
Sometimes you don't have to move away very far for you to be in a safe range. So if you can find ways to bring distance from that device and then limit your exposure when you can't, is usually the best because there's a lot of devices out there that claim that they can block EMFs. Most of them don't. And if you have a meter, you can prove that they don't. Uh, However, to be honest, some of them do bring your energy systems into balance. And I have tested these with one of these meters that you can measure acupuncture points. And they do seem to balance your body when you're using it. But I still wouldn't call that safe because the acupuncture pathways are really a superficial energy system. It's not getting down to the energy systems that really deal with proper communication. So we still really don't know even using that method.
And the only real way to tell how far away you are in a safer zone or not is by getting something like this TriField meter, right? It's a very simple solution to figure that out.
Yeah, and really they're not that expensive. Um, I mean, if you're an electrical engineer, you can buy some that are, $900 or ones that hook up to a computer with a oscilloscope and all these frequency devices that are $20,000 or $30,000, but no one needs that for their house. No one, so there's no reason why we can't spend a little money on a little device like this and make sure we're safe. And we can take them with us. You can put it in your luggage if you're traveling, and you get somewhere and measure and make sure that your bed is in a safe place if you're staying in a hotel or wherever you are.
Sure. And have you seen any evidence, or some people say linen can actually help fight off EMFs? Have you heard any of that at all?
it's funny you say that. Uh, I haven't, but uh, after our last time we talked, that thought came to my mind, and obviously I know it was Yahweh speaking to me. I had this idea that I should measure linen and see how it affects the EMF exposure, because I know it's a very absorption material, and I don't know of anyone who has done that. Yeah, if someone does know someone, I would be interested. But I actually do want to carry on an experiment like that, because we do know there's other fabrics. Like they have these lead reinforced bags for what is it, film. The only problem is you don't want to be wearing lead material.
Sure.
So, and then there's foil, and foil can block some out, but you're not going to wrap yourself with foil. So I would really be interested in finding out how much the linen would block out.
Well,
And
everybody I've heard that says that I've ever read that they say that, but nobody has the science to back it up, and I want to see science to, or at least an experiment to show me that that's true.
well, I plan on doing one, and I want to film it, and it would be very easy because you use the meter
Sure.
and you show what the device is without it, and maybe you wrap it with the linen and measure it and see if the frequencies are still
Well, I could just put it up on
coming
my
through.
wall where my electrical box is, and then put the meter and see if it's still as strong.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that. Well, I think we got the information we needed about EMFs, and I want everyone to take this seriously, do your research, and get this TriField meter. I highly recommend it. I mean, I know it's definitely helped us already. We moved the furniture around to get our couch away from that hotspot. And Dr. Alfonso, give us your website if anyone wants to look up any more of your research or get in touch with you.
Yes, the website is balanceoflifeclinic.com, and my email is bolavm@zoominternet.net.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show today, and we'll talk to you again soon. And if anyone has any questions, post them below the video.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.